We have to be willing to consider the family's specific needs based on their culture and their experience. And that's why culture is so very important. And make sure that everyone has the same understanding of what the challenges and the goals are. Because what I'll tell you is that going to court and sitting there and listening to the judge tell me about all this stuff, I don't remember what he said after he was done saying it. And what are the challenges? What are the goals? Like sometimes we're telling people stuff and we're reading it to them and saying, this is what you're gonna do, and I'm gonna have you to do this. And they don't even know and understand specifically what it is that they're supposed to do. So we need to make sure that they have an understanding exactly of what those challenges and those goals are. And we need to empower families to find solutions to their own challenges. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought about the different identities that we all have. We all have different identities when we show up every day. Me, former foster youth, formerly incarcerated, African American, I've been a student, I'm a mom, I'm a grandma. I have so many different identities. The main one, my professional one, a lot of times because of these other identities, when I'm showing up and trying to provide people with the information that they need, then they look like, okay, what am I going to get from you? Because they're not focusing on the whole of me, they're just taking a part of an identity. And so when we think about how it affects us as professionals, think about these kids. This guy right here, I try every time. 7 years, me and him, we've been doing this training. He has not left. I need, if somebody wants to send me a new little, keep him, you like
yes.
one? Okay, I'll keep him. So, we're gonna talk about Assembly Bill 175, AB 175. It was passed October 2nd, 2019. I actually started at the Ombudsperson's office on April 2nd, 2019. So the Bill of Rights, this was already in the making, but I was there in October when it was actually passed, and we were really, really excited. It clarified our office to provide the training and technical assistance, and the bill went into effect in January 2020. So 2025 last year, it was the 25-year anniversary of the California office of the Foster Care Ombudsperson. This year in 2026, thank you. We are currently celebrating 25 years of the Foster Youth Bill of Rights this year. So it's really, really big. It's really, really big. For that, I want to give a huge shout out to the LIVE experts at CYC, California Youth Connection. They're a youth-led organization that develops and grows leaders who empower each other and their communities to transform the foster care system. It was the advocacy of a group of foster youth that created the legislation that led to the OFCO and celebrating this historical milestone of a quarter of a century. CYC continues to lead with advocacy for creating new legislation to support all youth in care, including those impacted by the juvenile justice system, because those are my babies, y'all. Those are my babies. And those who were unhoused. JBAY, John Burton Advocates for Youth. They provide better laws to improve the quality of life for youth in California who have been in foster care or who have experienced homelessness. Now, everything that I'm talking about, like CYC, John Burton, they help in the advocacy that we do in creating the legislation and the laws that we uphold the rights for these youth at the Ombudsperson's office. He just don't want to go away, that's what Okay, now the clicker works. Okay, here's the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. We have publications. We have 3 publications. We have a warehouse full of publications. They're available online. You can go to our website, Foster Youth Health at dss.ca.gov, and you can order. We have coloring books, and we have handbooks. We have pocket accordions that fold out, and we have posters. And so as some of you go into this, if you have youth who are in those SDRTPs that I talked about, or if they're in a placement where there's 6 or more youth, that poster is supposed to be posted on the wall so that they know their rights in the placement. They're free. Oh yeah, I thought I said that. They're free. They're free. We have 12 categories of rights. And so in the publications, they go through them a whole lot more in depth. I'm gonna just talk to you about some of the rights that are there. So in the 12 categories, the first category is the personal rights. And that is just ensuring that the youth have access to hygiene and products that represent their culture and their ethnicity. That law enforcement is not used as threat for retaliation, that they live in a safe, healthy, and comfortable home. So when we go back into foster care, and I talk about being in foster care, a long, long time ago, it was like archaic. There wasn't even a Bill of Rights when I was in foster care, so I'll tell you that. It was with the products. So they were buying me like Suave products. And Suave didn't do a thing for me or my hair, but like different lotions, but it was cost effective, but it didn't help me, and that's because it wasn't for my culture and my ethnicity, my hair. The little LA Looks gel didn't hold my hair down, and it wasn't that I just wanted to be cute. It's about self-esteem. If your hair is not cute, you don't want to get up and present in front of the class, right? If it's sticking up in the back and you think it's brushed down, it's like, it's more about self-esteem. And if I have a lotion that makes me itch, and I'm in class, and I'm supposed to be taking the test, and I'm busy scratching, then I'm not going to be successful in class. And so a lot of times people think, oh, they just want this fancy stuff. It's not about fancy stuff. It's having those grooming products that are fitting them, that are to their ethnicity. Because I have dry skin, and so I can't use anything with perfume in it as far as lotion. And we all know those are the cheapest ones, right? It's $1. Oh, get you this, it smells real good. They get you a whole bunch of them, but it doesn't do anything for you. And I'm still ashy and I'm itching at this point. So what is the point in that? And so that's the importance of that with the personal rights when we talk about those grooming and those hygiene products that, that relate to them, that what they need. So then we go to ICWA, Indian Child Welfare Act, federal law. It's the law. ICWA is the law. ICWA is the law. We work very closely with the Office of Tribal Affairs, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But with the ICWA rights, it's about the education, because we know that any youth that have Native American, Alaskan Indian heritage, they are able to go to the UCs for free. It's a federal law. So we still provide, we have that verification letter, but automatically they can go to any UC that they want to if this is documented in their case plan, that they have that. And ICWA is more, when we get into it, it's cultural. And it's about belonging, even in that sense. And we have sexual orientation, gender identity expression, which is SOGI rights. The calls that we would receive from youth in facilities that were being misgendered. Youth have the right to choose the gender and be represented as they see fit. And it wasn't that they were being misgendered by other youth, they were being misgendered by staff, which was really heartbreaking. Have to get on the phone and have a conversation with someone, but then being somewhere where they don't feel safe, because they're supposed to be in safe places, right? So we've had calls about that. I'm gonna come back to education because that's my big one, okay? We're going to talk about sexual and reproductive health. They have those rights. And if they're 12 years of age or older, they have the right to choose their own doctors and then to get treatment in a way, and on their own without notifying an adult. They can choose their own doctor. The thing about it that when I say a lot of people that at any age, they're able to see a doctor without telling an adult about it. But at 12 years of age or older, they have the right to choose their own doctors, okay? Mental health, it's the same. They have a right to receive mental health treatment, to receive it in private. And with that too, even with sexual and reproductive health, that for it to be gender affirming. And even the same with mental health. A lot of the population that I work with, because I'm working with the juvenile justice population quite frequently, is gonna be that ICWA in there, it's gonna be that SOGI, it's gonna be that mental health, and those health issues that these youth are experiencing pretty much in those rights. Health rights are the same. We had a youth one time that wanted to go to the doctor. The staff decided she didn't need to go to the doctor. Staff and facilities they're not medical personnel. If a youth is saying that they need to go to the doctor or they're in pain, it's for us to take them to the doctor and let the doctors and the physicians decide if they need further treatment or not. Not to ridicule you and say, oh, you were running around yesterday and now all of a sudden you can't, no, we're not gonna take you to the doctor, because that is their right for that to happen for them. They have the right to go to court, to be present in court, to hear about their court hearings in writing, to have people in the courtroom that they would like to support them, and if there's someone that they would like not be there, they have the right to ask for them to leave as well. They have the right to be involved in their case plan. It's about them. It's a living document. It's gonna follow them all throughout foster care. I know my friend is listening, but I'm gonna use her story that she always used when we trained together, is she would talk about how every time the social worker would come, they would ask her the same questions over and over again. How's everything going the same? And she was like, she thought the social worker something was wrong with the social worker, because she was like, I just told her the last time she was here. But it's for her to grow up and to come and to do this work, to see and to understand that just because you were okay last Tuesday doesn't mean that things are okay 2 weeks from now on a Wednesday. And so that's their job. Every time they come to act, they're supposed to. Because the case plan is a living and breathing document that continues to grow with these youth as they navigate through this foster care system. Child and family team, the first word is child. So who should be included, right? It's not the family child team, it's a child and family team meeting, the CFT. They have a right to be there. They have a right to have people that make them feel comfortable there. I had a youth one time, and this was the only time I ever received this call, is she didn't want to leave foster care. Right, I know, she was in foster care. She came from a large sibling group, and she was the oldest. But in foster care, she was placed with a resource parent, and she wasn't with her siblings. So she finally felt free. She didn't have to babysit for her siblings. She didn't have to take care of them, feed them, provide for them. And then the parent had did everything, and they were going to be reunified. She was advocating not to go back because she felt like that she was going to go back to being the primary caregiver for her siblings if she went back into the home. And believe me, I looked all up in CWSM, it's like there was nothing. The parent had did everything they were supposed to do, and we're here to reunify. We're not here to keep kids. We're here to reunify them if we can. And so because it was a safe and viable placement for her to return home, she didn't want to. So all I could offer her was, hey, you can have a CFT, and the people that she wanted her aunt and uncle to become her guardians. And I said, well, you have the right to request a CFT, and you can have them there as your support people to advocate, because I'm not gonna tell her that she can't advocate for herself if that's what she wants. So she had that option to have a CFT and to have those people there with her that she wanted to provide her that support for that CFT, because they're supposed to have it when they come into foster care and then every 6 months. But if they just had one last week and something comes up they wanna talk about, they can have one again. When kids are in STRTPs or in those therapeutic intensive service foster care placements, they should be, I think it's like 45 days. I don't have my notes in front of me and I have to be on the phone for a minute. I think it's like the 45 days, and they're supposed to be documented. The next set of rights is the family connection. They have the right, like we were talking about, when I told the A through K people that they can keep their connections, and the L through Z people, they looking at me crazy because they can't maintain those family connections. It used to be when I was in foster care that when I went to the Children's Receiving Home in Sacramento, that I was given a piece of paper with my attorney's name and my uncle's name and my social worker's name. And those were the people that I was allowed to go into the little booth and close the door and make phone calls to. Today there is no such thing as a do not call list. The only thing would be, there would be a list of people that they couldn't reach out to. And they would have to be ordered by the judge. It's not, I love you all, it's not the social workers. I'm gonna say I love you before I say that. It's not the social workers that determine that, it's not the probation officers, it is court ordered, it would be by the judge to determine that they're not able to have. So if there's ever like a safety issue or a risk, that's a lot that comes up, because, you know, we have youth, we have CSEC youth who get trafficked, and sometimes we have to do things on case by case, but we have to get those youth back in front of the judge and present the person as someone that they should not be in communication with in order for the judge to order it, in order for it to be valid for them not to be able to have that contact. Adulthood and money management is one of my favorites. This is one of the rights that was added at AB 175, and all foster youth should be receiving an allowance. Resource parents, when they agree to take children, the money for the allowance is included in the amount of money that they receive. It's allotted, and there is an amount, and all youth should be receiving an allowance. If they're 14 and they're able to work, they can go to work. I had an issue one time because sometimes things inhibit them, and it was because of mental health. Now, for something like that, we want to make sure it's not that we don't want the youth to work, but we want the youth to be safe, and we want everyone else to be safe. If we know someone that might have a meltdown, or they might not need to be at the cash register because they get anxiety a lot, then we don't want them to do that, even though we want them to learn how to work. So sometimes decisions and meetings have to be made. I've had meetings with youth that are in placements regarding that, and have to meet with the team to find out exactly why, because they'll call and complain, like, I want to get a job and they won't let me work. And so then I have to, we have to come in and investigate and ask the questions, but that it's not that they just want to inhibit the youth, it's more based on protecting the youth and the youth's well-being while they're not being allowed to work in the first place. So we'll go back now to education, because that's what I am, the juvenile justice and education specialist. I wanted to highlight, because everybody thought, like, where did she have this blue shawl on? So when I was in foster care, I was a Foster Youth Education Fund scholar, FYEF. They provide scholarships to foster youth and former foster youth in Sacramento, Placer, Yolo, and El Dorado counties if you were in care in those counties, or if you're currently attending school. And the thing of it is, on this, when they made this, it's now 4%, but it says 3. Like, only 4% of former foster youth get a bachelor's degree, and 1% with master's degrees, like where I'm at, in the 1% receiving those degrees. And so that's why it's so important that we have these programs, Foster Youth Education Fund and Guardian Scholars and different things, so. Yeah.
We'll do questions at the end.
So, reasonable and prudent parenting, so I'm almost done, we'll just get through this. The Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act of 2014 mandated that state authorities develop reasonable and prudent parent standards for children's participation in age or developmentally appropriate extracurricular enrichment activities. California implemented these through SB 974, and they're reflected in CWS reforms. The goal is to empower caregivers to make parenting decisions that support normalcy in youth lives. As we shared before, RPPS is meant to eliminate unreasonable limitations on everyday activities and to ensure normalcy for youth in the foster care system. The standard eliminates overly restrictive practices and allows for participation in age-appropriate activities such as sports and extracurricular activities. So when we talk about sustaining the caregivers, right? Let's talk about social worker burnout, right? Because I don't take vacation. I be like, I just schedule some days off, and then somebody call, they want me to come for a training, and I take the vacation off my calendar because I want to go and do the work. But we have to, learn, because what do the children and families need? They need access to health care, dental care, they need nutrition, they need stable housing. At CDSS, we have the RAD, the Research Automation and Data Division. We work with UC Berkeley with the CWIP, Child Welfare Indicators Project, and I went to a CQI conference, and they were there looking at the data, trying to find ways to make the work that you do and that you're coming in to do easier. At CDSS, we have a social worker empowerment hotline. Social workers can report concerns regarding the county child welfare agencies, practices, policies, or procedures that endanger the health, safety, or well-being of children. We have certain practice considerations regarding that to make it less stressful. You have cross-agency coordination. and to reduce barriers to services. So when we talk about equity as a sustainability strategy, we want to address those racial and systemic inequities. We want to have inclusive decision-making, right? Supporting the frontline voices, the people with lived experience. I know for you guys to support your physical and emotional well-being, we need fair compensation and advancement opportunities in this work. We need to reimagine balance, right? At the individual level, it would be boundaries and manageable workloads, wellness plans, and at the organizational level, reasonable caseloads, flexibility and trust-based policies, and being more with the trauma-informed is moving from the what to the why. Because what we want to think about, and I was at a training and someone asked me, who tows the tow truck when the tow truck breaks down? If you are out here towing the children and you're towing the families, what happens when you stop? Who's gonna tow you? You have to rely on each other and all of us in here doing the work, because that's the thing. Who comes to get the tow truck when the tow truck breaks down on the side of the road? It has to be another tow truck. Culture as an intervention, when we can work within the protocols of the community to utilize these methods, you never forget their story. It's their story. And because it's theirs, it belongs to them. We need to create belonging at the beginning onset. It's very critical to ground your intention. Belonging is mutual and it's reciprocal. Belonging values every voice at the table, and never forget the story. It is the purpose behind what will be built. Belonging creates safety and is critical to learning. Well, at CDSS, I just want to name off some of the services in the toolbox that we actually have for you. We have our office, the OFCO, within the Office of Equity. We also have an ICWA hotline that tribal representatives can report county noncompliance. We have the Office of Tribal Affairs, who primarily works between the liaison between the government and the tribes in California. We have the Transitional Age Youth Unit, the TAY unit, that works with those youth in 8012, those extended foster care, because foster care goes to 21 now if you want to stay in it. We talk about reunification, we talk about Kin First. We have that Center for Excellence in Family Finding and Engagement. It's a California-based initiative. We want to put youth with family members if we can. We want to keep them in home. We want to do the less restrictive placement. And Kin First culture improves stability and lasting support networks, okay? We have System of Care under AB 2083. It requires counties to develop memorandums of understanding, MOUs, to create coordinated trauma-informed systems for youth in care. This is all the things in the toolbox. And we're supported by agency, which is the California Health and Human Services Agency. We have our Safety Intervention and Prevention branch, early intervention branch within CFSD, the California Department of Social Services. And I'll tell you what they've done is phenomenal. They have hired people with lived experience. We now have at CDSS 2 lived expert engagement managers. My good friend Malaysia Robinson and Emerald Evans, both who were Guardian Scholars at Sacramento State, now work at CDSS as lived expert engagement managers to be able to engage with the people that we serve and that are lived experts, and bring more lived experts into the field to do this actual work. They also do prevention programs, because even in my role now, it involves working with youth at risk of coming into the foster care system or the juvenile justice system, not waiting until they actually get there. We have that Children's Services Quality Management branch. They do CQI to develop and evaluate the work. That's those case reviews. And we also have, I work with Chief Probation Officers of California and County Probation Officers, and we also have OICR, which is the Office of Youth and Community Restoration. So they are over youth when they are in the juvenile hall. But as I sat here and said today, what most of us know is that a lot of these are the same youth, because they're in juvenile hall. Sometimes they go AWOL, and then they end up in juvenile hall, they come back out, they go into placement, they're back in foster care because they're placed outside the home, so that again makes them a foster youth. Supporting statewide well-being would be, we lead with empathy and we build what we intend to prioritize. That's empowering. We can overcome disproportionality and disparities through partnerships along the way, and that goes beyond input and representation. Input does not equal partnership, and representation does not equal shared power. I will say it again, we build what we intend to prioritize. CDSS had the From the Ground Up initiative. From that initiative, I was able to have a dual status community of practice where I bring in community partners, community organizations, probation, child welfare, so that we can better serve our dual status youth who are in the system. Because we all have to work with them instead of putting them off, and understanding, again, that child safety is a we issue. So just one thing that I'd like to leave you with, and I know we don't have time to do it here, but if you just think about, we talked about, like if you could just think about one policy change that would help make the system better, and one practice change on an individual level, and then one on an organizational level, and ask how would this improve well-being? It would be organizational, it would be more reasonable caseloads, flexibility and trust-based policies. At the CQI conference, they're now talking about trying to separate the administrative part of social work from the field work, the work of going and engaging with the kids to provide help to make those caseloads manageable. So even they're looking at the data. That's why I say that it's so important, even though it makes my head hurt, because this is how they're going to figure out how to make it easier to serve the populations that we serve. I want to thank you. This is our contact information. If you want to reach us, if you want to order some publications, we are on Instagram and we are on Facebook. That is our hotline number. You can follow us, you can call us, and I also want to share if there's anyone that is in the Sacramento area on May 16th, we will be hosting our Foster Care Awareness Month at the state capitol. It's a Saturday, but we would love for you to come out and join us. They're gonna have vendors out there, face painting. I don't know if there's a jump house. I saw the flyer. I know y'all probably don't want to be in the jump house, but it's gonna be really a lot of fun, and so we would really welcome you to come join us in Sacramento at the Capitol on May 16th to be a part of Foster Care Awareness Month, and I thank you all for your time today.
We do have time for
not done yet.
10 minutes of question and answer. Please raise your hand and a microphone runner, me, Ashley or I, will bring you the microphone. I'm gonna start over here, I think. Yeah.
Hi, yeah, first of all, how can we get you to come present? I'm part of the Resource Family Support Division down in LA County, and we use the Resource Parent Prudent Standard, and we give the Foster Youth Bill of Rights to our caregivers. And a lot of times I feel like social workers themselves are a little confused on what means what, or what is yes and what is no. So are you open, or do you guys do that to come to maybe like a division Zoom meeting or something?
I have gone to Orange County Social Services and trained at their meetings. I'm always happy that that's the work that I'm here to do. I love LA. I would love to come down there to do a training. We also have analysts in SoCal as well, but if you're looking for a training and you want it with the juvenile justice aspect for them to understand everything, I am happy to come down there and talk to your social workers and train. I'll give you my contact information before I leave.
And then the actual, like, a particular question, I have a lot of my caregivers always asking about taking away phones as a form of discipline, whether that violates a child's privacy rights, because technically it's that child's phone, but also they're in trouble, so is it a violation of their rights, or is it okay because they did something that now needs a circumstance, like a consequence?
I knew somebody was gonna give me this phone question. I should have said no phone question. Okay, no, for cell phones, no, you are right, and that comes up because they do have the right to have the phone, but we wanna empower resource parents. So if it's like during dinner time, you want to say, hey, put the phone away, or there was an instance, I had a resource parent that when the youth come home, they took the phone from them, and they kept it till the next morning when they went to school, because it was for them, like if they were out and they needed to reach them. They do have the right to have the phone, it can't be taken away from them, but you can restrict, because, it's parenting, right? And if they're not doing something they're supposed to do, you can restrict the usage of the phone. It's just that the phone just can't be taken away from them and then not given back to them again. But you can restrict the usage, just as a parent would do. If you're not doing your homework, then I'm gonna have your phone, or you can't have phone time during this time. When I was in foster care and I came home from school, we had study time for 2 hours. Like, you didn't touch anything until your homework was done. If you didn't have homework, you read a book until your 2 hours were up, and so even though there weren't these rights, it was parenting, because if I hadn't had that, I might not have studied and be up here talking to you guys today, right? So it's important for them to be able to parent. We want to empower resource parents as well. I hope, does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I don't know, I'm not picking,
Sorry.
okay.
Hi, my name is Jaleesa Otero. I'm from Fresno State. I have a two-part question.
Mhm.
First part, can you go back to the first slide with your information on it for me?
Ooh, well, I don't know.
Went through so quick, so I'm like,
I know, let me see, I don't know, let me try to get to it. I might need help, I might need help.
I got you.
And then the second part of my question is, similar in regards to phone stuff, but in an STRTP setting, how does that work in terms of like phone access, like cell phone access?
Okay, so that is a little bit different, because with having been on a hotline and understanding that a lot of times when you come into STRTPs, that they have like blackout periods, there's a certain amount of time that you are not able to have your phone. And they are still able to have a phone, but the usage can be restricted. If lights and stuff are out at 10 o'clock and they take the phone, then that is fine, as long as the youth is given the phone back, in accordance with the rules. I've had youth that call, say, oh, they said I couldn't be on my tablet at 1 o'clock in the morning. You don't need to be on your tablet at 1 o'clock in the morning. You can have a tablet, you should be asleep because you have to go to school. So it's reasonable, it's parenting, So they are again able to restrict it, and then it goes again with those rules. Sometimes that's why it requires like a phone call. We can talk and figure out like when is the youth blackout days, or if the youth is leaving the facilities, and are they able, to have their phone. And so some of those are done more on a case-by-case basis. But they do still, these rights are to all youth in care. But a lot of times with the youth who are in the STRTPs, because I work a lot with justice-involved youth, sometimes there might be restrictions. So if there's a restriction and a court order says that they cannot have a phone, then they're not able to have a phone. And a lot of times, we don't have specific guidance for juvenile justice youth. But I always tell probation, we do have it for CSEC, for the youth who are trafficked. And so it's pretty much the same guidelines that we would go by regarding that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it was specifically for kiddos on probation anyway. So
Okay.
it was all in the mix there.
Okay. They always fall into play. That's why I talk about them all the time, because they're here. They're here.
You mentioned tax credit, which I hadn't heard before. Could you tell a little bit about like foster youth getting tax credit? And also you mentioned UC access for ICWA youth. So if you could just say that again, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Because ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, is a federal law that all youth who is notated in their case plan that they have that Native, Alaskan, American Indian heritage, that they are able to attend UCs for free. And again, like in addition to, we do provide the foster verification letter if they wanted to go like to, a CSU or anything, but just having that Indian heritage, they are eligible to attend UCs for free. And I think it's been the last 3 years that youth who are in foster care are eligible to maintain a tax credit. It's kind of like if you go to school, if you're in school, they have like that educational tax credit. So now they have that tax credit for foster, I think it's like $1,000 and something, but in order to receive it, they have to show verification that they were in foster care. So they reach out to us, and the TAY unit is the one who actually provides those verifications. And they work with the tax board here in the state of California to send over those socials and verify the youth who are eligible. And it's like an additional, like, say if they only work, they only gonna get $300 back, they're eligible for like $1,000 and something of tax credit just from having been in foster care.
And that's annually up to how many years?
That's the one that I don't know, because I know the education one, I think is like 6 years that you can do that one. So I'm not really sure for that. I could look and check it out and send a message.
And then only UCs, not CSUs for FYUs, right?
For ICWA right now, because it's a federal law, and the UCs are University of California, it's the difference, so yeah. But they can use that verification letter and still go. It's just that they have that priority for UCs, yes.
We have time for 2 quick questions or 1 more question.
Hi, thank you so much, really great presentation.
Thank you.
I'm curious about what the advocacy specifically looks like in your office, or like, how do you help make sure certain policies are enforced, and like, what's the overlap or difference between like the child maybe contacting your lawyer versus you?
Lawyers call us. You know what? I'll be like, why are the lawyers calling me? Sometimes they ask, because we are here, we advocate for the youth. You know, and then being a manager, sometimes when you have to look and you're managing someone else's cases and you see something, the biggest thing for me when I was on the phone is talking about our purview, because you see something that comes in and you have lived experience and you feel like, oh my God, we have to do something about this, or it's something that we can't. I can say that the team that we have, they are very, very strong advocates for foster youth. Sometimes we have to say like, this is not in our jurisdiction. Like that was the biggest thing for me. But we advocate, we make phone calls. They call the social workers, they call to the counties, they're having meetings. We have analysts that are part of child and family team meetings for support. I've shown up for a youth that was about to be kicked out of a college and had to have a meeting with the dean, you know, and another teacher, and it's like if I hadn't shown up, I don't know what would have happened to that youth. It's like 2 grown-ups on one child, and I was there, you know, to speak up and to be able to advocate. So that's the advocacy. Like I've gone into, like I said, prisons and talked to people about higher education, come home and go to school. Like let's do this. We advocate. We advocate at OFCO. We are advocates, true advocates.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I'm picking people.
For your questions, thank you for your questions. I think now we're gonna hand it over to Joanne to guide us into our next thing.
Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan. I'm a Title IV student from Sacramento State. Stingers up. And I'm really excited to introduce our next workshop. The workshop's name is Power Sharing for Wellbeing, Equity-Aligned Child Welfare Practice. Today, we are lucky enough to learn from Dion Puckett, a Black woman socialized as a Black woman in San Francisco, California. At the age of 18, Dion relocated to Atlanta, Georgia to attend Clark Atlanta University, a historically Black institution of higher education. While living in the American South, Dion began to blend academic learning with lived experience, shaping the visionary equity strategist, instructor, and organizational change consultant we have the opportunity to engage with today. Dion is a Title IV graduate from CSU Stanislaus. I don't know the mascot, but Warriors, okay, cool. With a master's of social work and over 10 years of experience in designing and delivering transformational learning experiences across public agencies, nonprofits, and academic institutions, she is skilled in building inclusive environments, facilitating cross-sector collaboration, and translating complex systems into accessible and actionable tools. Dion has practiced social work with San Diego County Child Welfare, which heavily influenced her perspective of race, equity, and helping professions. Dion commits to empowering diverse communities through education, coaching, and equitable practice engagements, with hopes that her 3 children, Megan, who is cultivating her lived experience at Clark Atlanta University as a sophomore, Devin and Lennox, who are both in elementary school, have the opportunity to experience a world that is gentle, collaborative, and empowering of all people, regardless of their identity. I hope you are ready to learn more about how power sharing and equity enhances social worker well-being and lasting change with the families and communities we serve. Please join me in welcoming Dion to the stage. The room thinned out, huh? Okay, good. I figured I would only be talking to 5 people, makes it a lot easier. Good afternoon. I hope you guys have had an opportunity to enjoy the conference. I have enjoyed engaging with many different folks. I've enjoyed the workshops. So this has been fabulous. And so thank you to the team, staff, and students who have put this all together. Let's see, let me find my clicker. So glad to be here with you and really just get into talking about what does power sharing for well-being of families and us as social workers really look like in the work. How are we going to do this? And what's the point of it all? And so when you think about the power that you hold, the power that you walk into the room with, how does that show up in the spaces that you're going to occupy moving forward? So the first things we're going to talk about is why. Why are we talking about power sharing? Power sharing is always present in every single relationship that we're going to have. How do you know it? How do you see it? Where does it show up for you? And when do you give it up? How many folks in this room like to have control? That's your power, right? But what happens when what you want to be in control of doesn't align with the other person on the other side of your conversation? Are you still in control? What do you do? How do you handle it? We'll talk about that today. When we're thinking about that, how do we align equity practices with the role of sharing power with our families and community? If you were to hold a piece of paper up or a book over your head, how heavy does that get holding it by yourself? Very heavy. Hold it up there long enough, your arm is going to start to wobble, shake, right? We have to be willing to share the weight of the thing that we're holding. And in this case, it is the child welfare work. Families are equipped to talking about their story, their narrative, and they know solutions that exist for them. It's our role to think about how we show up in a helping profession and really consider what helping looks like today. Helping is not doing for. So we'll talk about that voice, the influence, and the access to opportunity and resources that we want to extend to families. And then finally, we're thinking about how those power sharing activities allow both families to thrive as well as us as social workers. It's a lot of work that you guys are getting ready to enter into. It's a heavy load, but we need you. We need you in this profession. We need you to sustain this work. We need you to keep moving the work forward. I have been so encouraged sitting in workshops and listening to the different voices that have been shared today. I'm so encouraged about the way in which our field is going to change when you guys get to interact into it. I'm so excited for the experiences that our communities will have because the thoughts, the ideas, and the hopes that are in this room are really going to make change within a change organization that doesn't like to change very fast. So excited for what you guys are going to be bringing forward. And that's going to really help and support the resilience of you all as practitioners, as well as the families you serve. So today we're going to look and talk a little bit about our identity, our bias. If you have class with me, you know this is always in our subject. We're talking about it almost every Tuesday because it is so important to the way in which we show up into the work. We're going to talk about what are those actual power sharing strategies?
How do we really do this work? How do we move this forward? And then what does practitioner well-being look like? And so I just want to make sure that when you are thinking about power sharing, you're naming it. It's always present. It's in everything. And you need to think about where it's showing up in the work that you are facilitating. So when we think about our identity and our bias and our daily decisions, how are you showing up? And where exactly are you interpreting or informing the behavior or the risk for our families? When we are making assessments, we are investigating, we might be falling into ways in which we we might be falling into traps around the culture that exists within our county agencies. How will that influence the way you see families and community? How is that going to influence the way in which you are going to interact, engage, and hold the stories and the narratives of the families that are being shared with you? And so our agencies are going to control access to services, resources, timelines, and decisions, things that we don't necessarily have a whole lot of control on, and we're trying to keep up with the work. And if you're a new employee, right, you're concerned about probation. You might be concerned about if you are going to be able to promote in the future and where your career is going to go. When you're thinking about self in this role, you're also impacting those families. And so when we think about that, we need to make sure that power doesn't just rest with the individual worker, but it's embedded into the agency structure. How do we get power shared and embedded in the work that we do? How do we consider that with the mandates that are given to us? How do we show up? Our last presenter just spoke eloquently about the way in which CDSS and the Ombuds office supports the work. It's more than just doing the work, right? We have to get into the space in which we are able to really make changes within our agency. Our biases influence documentation, the way in which we see families, the way in which we label people, the way in which we identify how someone is navigating through a system. And so when we think about those tones, when we think about those expectations of families, whose expectation are we using to guide the work? Is it relevant to your experience growing up? Or is it relevant to the way in which this family is able to navigate safely through community to show up in the best way that they can? And so when we're sharing that power, it's listening to the stories. It's holding on to the values that are set within a family system. And the goal is not to just change the family system. The goal is to educate, to inform, to help and understand what might make this family better from their perspective. And so we're thinking about those systemic inequities that continue to impact families on a day-to-day basis. I was in a presentation earlier in which ACEs was brought up. Oftentimes we stop at ACEs and we don't start to look at the expanded ACEs, which goes beyond just thinking about the social determinants of impacts to health, but it also looks at community violence. It also looks at racism and the impact of how people have to make decisions to feed their family and make it to the next step. Are you considering that in your social work practice? What does that look like for a family who has to make decisions and their definition of safety doesn't align with yours, right? And so we think about that and we think about our underserved families that need to be seen in ways that they are currently not seen in community. So when we're thinking about that identity and bias and power sharing, we're setting expectations. We're wanting to be interactive, reflective, and practice-centered. We want to make sure that we're inviting curiosity and honesty into the conversation. We're making sure that there are no perfect answers. There is no one right way to raise a child. They didn't come with a handbook. In case you didn't know, I have 3 of them. None of them came with a handbook, right? And they're all so different. And the way in which I have to respond to them as a parent is based on who they are as individuals and the spaces that they occupy as individuals. And every single parent is making those same decisions at the best of their ability. And so when we consider that, we're considering how folks are navigating. So start by looking inward. What are our own personal expectations of families in our community? What do you expect? What do you see as safety? Who's there? When we think about that, our identity shapes how we, interpret our own behavior and assess risk. We're understanding and reflecting the knowledge in our own exposure gaps. Our bias shows up, and those systemic inequities also shape the way in which we see who is deserving. Who is deserving of your support? Who's not? What happens when the client comes and yells at you, calls you out of your name, disrespects you? Are they deserving of your support? Yeah. What about that child that doesn't show up the way that you want to? They don't want to participate in services. They're refusing to engage. They don't want to talk to you. Are they still deserving of your support? Your supervisor is telling you, get the documentation in, get the reports written. I don't have access to that client. Are they still deserving of your support? Absolutely. And when you don't have their story, whose story are you telling? Is it your own understanding of who these people are? And if so, what harm might you be doing in that process? Power sharing means that I don't hold your narrative. I get to tell the story that you share with me. And so when we engage in such a practice, it allows us to honor the voice of the individual in which we're partnering with. So that when we get to decision points, we're not just making stuff up. I think they should reunify. I don't think this family should reunify. I think this child should be removed. I don't think this child should be removed. These decision points should not just be our gut feeling. Social work is not a practice of our gut, right? It is a practice of being able to fully assess a situation based on information we've been able to engage and gather, so that our decision points are informed, so that our decision points have an opportunity to really make the impact that's necessary on the families in which we're engaging with. When we write stories about our families, about who's resistant, what do they look like? Close your eyes. When I say the resistant parent, who do you see? Is it a Black woman? Is it a Latina woman? Is it a father? A Black father who you probably didn't want to call to begin with? What does that look like? Well, they're not on the birth certificate, so I don't have to engage. What is the impact that you hold when you get to choose who you want to engage with and how you want to identify folks? What is the weight that that carries for the rest of their life? You will go through case after case after case after family after family after family throughout your career. Those families won't forget you. You might forget several of them, but they won't forget you. And so when you think about the weight that we have when we write and we put stuff into CWS CMS, which will one day be CARES, yay. One day, we'll get there. You are telling the narrative. You are writing the court reports that tell somebody's story. And the power that you carry with that responsibility has to be intentional. It has to be mindful. It has to be considered of the individuals in which we're speaking of. Our timelines and recommendations, we love them, right? We got to get stuff done. We got to get these kids to a safe space in a timely manner. And that sounds great in theory. But when I tell you that my client has 12 years of substance use history and we're expecting them to be sober tomorrow, it's unrealistic. When we set folks up and say, you will not use drugs while parenting your children, great in theory, but what sorts of trauma has that individual experienced that we're unaware of that navigates the way in which they've chosen their coping skills to make sense of the world? And so when that happens, and the first thing we say is, oh, I have a positive toxicology test for you. You've been using. How does that share in the power? How does that enhance the ability and the willingness and the desire to engage any further with you? Because at this point, I've just been blamed. I'm now being shamed. What am I going to do with that? And how do I show up tomorrow and try again? So when we're thinking about those timelines, those recommendations, the willingness to get it right. Now listen, timelines and recommendations are great. Anybody have a New Year's resolution this year? Still forgetting about them. Listen, I've regifted myself a Peloton for the last 5 years. I put a new bow on it every Christmas, right? One day I'm gonna ride that thing. One day I'm gonna power it on, okay? Let's start there. Change is hard. And 30 days, 6 months is not enough time. Especially when the person who comes up to your home every 30 days says, "What have you done wrong?" Let me talk about, "Oh, you didn't get registered into that class," right? That's not sharing power. Essentially what that is that is not allowing people space to move through this process in partnership with us. And so we want to consider that. We think about our tone, we think about our language, we think about our relational stance. When you get into your agencies, many folks, and I've been working with agencies and counties up and down the state of California, and I read court reports, and I love to see when they say, the agency says, the department recommends. Who's the department? The worker. It's you. It's not the department. The department is a building that you go to, right? It is you. Hold relationship with the families that you engage with, because the department in and of itself doesn't care about me. You have the capacity to care about me. You have the capacity to care about my reunification. You have the capacity to care about the way in which I am going to parent and engage with my children. And so that relational stance is huge to thinking about how we support every family moving through this process. And it goes back to the question, who's deserving? Is it only the parents you like? Is it only the ones that are nice to you? Are you going to be in relationship with me when I curse you out? Are you going to be in relationship with me when I call you 30 times a day needing an answer to my question because I'm having a mental health spiral right now? But I feel like if I don't talk to you, I don't have real answers, and I'm not going to make it through this process. Will you still be in relationship with me? And what is that going to look like? Or do you ignore the phone calls? Roll me over to voicemail. Call me back in a week. Well, I've already been spiraling, not seeing my children. Matters getting worse. The amount of power and control that you have in this relationship sets the tone for how we're going to be able to move through. So when you think about power in you, where do you currently anticipate holding power in your work? For those of you that are currently in the work, what does that look like? And how might your identity or bias influence those moments? Take a moment and think about this question and talk to the person next to you. Where are you going to hold power? What's it going to look like? What bias might come up for you? The person next to you. Talk to that person. All right, there's so much chatter in the room. And in true social work fashion, I am nosy. So I want to know, what are the biases that come up and how are you seeing power? Go for it.
When the sexual perpetrator of physical abuse abuse their husband or their partner, I kind of have to sit with that of kind of like, am I judging this all and being too harsh? I don't want sympathy for her. And that kind of influences, especially with support writing and stuff, how I'm thinking of plans writing family maintenance or promotion of rights, because I have that kind of thing on my shoulder that I judge so quickly. So there's different stuff I have. Doing this. Right, am I giving her a little bit more grace, stuff like that, because for me, like I said, I'm still working through it.
Yeah.
I'm working through that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just didn't sit right.
Yeah. I appreciate your transparency. Yeah. Who else? Go for it.
A lot of the social workers, like jobs and services, okay. They'll kind of pass the idea of power onto the next worker. They're like, oh, that's not me. I don't do this, but the person who'll see you in a couple months, like that's their decision, right? That you can talk to them about it. Like no one really takes responsibility for our presence in the home, even in the moment where, it's almost, sometimes it's a way to like help build trust, but it's a little dishonest sometimes. It's very dishonest, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. And that's such a great point, right? Raise your hand in this room if you woke up today and said, I can't wait to hurt somebody. Anybody? Nobody, right? I hope nobody in this room. And that's the reality. And this is why we get to pass the buck to somebody else, right? Because I don't want to be the person that causes harm. But guess what? The sheer power of our badge is harmful. Right? Intent and impact are two things. We have great intention to have children safe in community, and our sheer presence has an impact on those children and families, no matter what, even if I just came to ask a question. Right? Yeah, great point. I saw.
Yeah, so people in my cohort have already heard me talk about this, so sorry that I'm repeating myself.
We're welcome.
But I'm going to be very vulnerable right now and share that I'm an intern, right? So there was a mother who had, we weren't even sure if she had 9 children or 11 children, and they had all been separated from her by the system, right, by the agency. I thank God I only had a thought and didn't say it out loud, but I had the thought of, see, this is why women of color were sterilized back in the day. And I was like, oh shit, what did I just think?
Yeah.
Like that, whoa.
Yeah.
And ever since then, like that case has been stuck with me because I'm like, what, like, where did that come from? What am I going to do to change that in my head? Like that mentality that I had, like, or have, it really, like, honestly, it rocked my world.
Yeah. I so appreciate your honesty and transparency. And can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Women of color, what color was that woman?
I believe she was mixed race. I believe she was probably white and black.
Okay. And so is that theory, is that sort of notion held for certain populations more than others, right? Because when you think about it, historically, people had large numbers of children for a reason, right? Oftentimes farming, tending to land, right? Cultivation, family growth, preservation, those sorts of things, right? Our community has shifted. And yet some of those same beliefs are still rooted in the way in which we show up and engage with folks. And if we don't question ourselves, why in the hell am I thinking this? Why am I not holding grace for this woman? Why am I not exploring and thinking about where this father is? Or wanting to even do the work, right? We're missing opportunities, one, to engage with families, two, we're missing opportunities to extend the power for them to have control over what the rest of their life looks like. Because when they go to sleep at night, they're living with the decisions that who makes? Us. Now, if I made a decision for your lives right now, today, how many of you would be like, oh yeah, go ahead and decide what's happening in my life tomorrow? None of you, right? What? Oh, okay. We can go shopping, Dad. Thank you. But it's only like 3 outfits in the closet. Don't worry. Tomorrow it'll be leggings and a t-shirt. It's might not trust me then. But the point is that essentially we are making lifelong decisions for other people. Well, we go back to our homes, we go back to our lives, we go back to work the next day. And if we have not shared the power with those individuals, thank you. If we have not shared the power with those individuals, we are making decisions that are about us, about who I want to be in community with, about what I want my neighbors to look like, or what I want their household to be like. Well, that's not my decision because I'm not moving in with them. But yet we carry that power. And I will tell you, it is roped into the way in which the system has been organized. You have been taught and told you are going out to assess safety based on your definition or a definition that was written in a textbook or a law or a policy that most communities of color had no influence on what safety actually looked like, but yet are greatly impacted by those definitions of safety. For those that go into ER or have worked in ER, how many of you guys are asking families, what does safety look like for you? As opposed to saying, our agency says that this is what safety looks like and you need to get here. Otherwise, I'm putting you in IS, right? These voluntary, involuntary services. So again, we're thinking about our power and the way in which it shows up. And so when we're thinking about those power sharing strategies, we have to think about a healing-centered approach. Transparency. What does that look like? Are we really transparent? No. No, why not? We say we want people to know what's going to happen next, what our decisions are going to be. We say that we want people to understand the way that the system works so that we're not seen as baby snatchers anymore, right? But that's all about us. I don't want to be seen as the bad guy in the community. But the reality is that we aren't as transparent as we probably could be because we don't hold space. And so when we're shifting to thinking about power sharing strategies, where can I be transparent in this process? Where can I be honest about what is happening and why it is happening? And sometimes that transparency isn't just in that conversation with the family and community. We have to also be transparent back with our agency. The actions and the behaviors that we are putting on a community are not working. How do we make change within, as opposed to just blindly adopting a culture that has existed before us? I come from the old guard. I graduated in 2010, I think, from my MSW program, started in San Diego in 2011. Folks like me who are still in positions of power within your county saw social work in a very different way than what you guys are looking at today. Bring it up, lift it up frequently and often, because it is you guys that is going to continue to make changes and waves in the way in which we practice. My views have greatly changed since I was a practitioner in social work. And so I think about this every day, that we're on a highway that has already been built, that we continue to go down in child welfare, and we have to start building a frontage road so that we can get off of this highway and really see a system that benefits families in partnership with social workers. And so as we continue to do that, thinking about that transparency without limits, what that might look like for our families. Opportunities to inform voice and choice. Whose voices are we hearing? Whose stories are we telling? When I ask social workers sometimes, and tell me, what do you think this parent would say about why they went out and used? Or why they keep going back to that same relationship? Oh, I think they would say, you think. Whose thoughts are these then? That tells me that you haven't asked the question. Are you asking the question? We're not asking for your thoughts, we're asking for their story. And so do you have that? Are you capturing it? Are you engaging their voices and their choices? Was it a choice to have 11 children, or was that a response to a community in which that individual was growing up in, right? Some folks are making decisions out of survival. How do we see that? And how do we make larger systemic changes around communities that have people surviving in such dire straits? It's not just, let me remove your kids and now all of a sudden you no longer have this challenge. What's happening economically in communities? There's a lot happening in the world. I don't know if you guys have turned the TV on lately, but there is a lot happening in the world right now that we're battling with. Families that don't want to engage with us because they're afraid that we also will report them to ICE, right? I can't trust you, right? And as much as we want to hold those families in space and say, no, I am here to help, we also have limited control because there are governmental federal agencies that are pulling data and going out and finding families, despite our willingness or our desire to keep them confidential. And so again, when we're thinking about those voices and choices and transparency, are we honest about that process? Are we honest about our own limitations within an agency that is run by a government system with well-intended, and yet still has an impact? When we're thinking about collaboration and respect for lived experience and how folks are navigating life, are we open to difference? Are we only listening for the folks that have success stories? Tell me how you've overcome your adversity. That I want to hear. But if you're still in it, then what? Right? How do we navigate those pieces? And so do I think about or ask you how you think you should repair the harm that's happening in your life? Do I sit and hold space for that? Do I say, well, that's not a county approved provider, so I'm not going to use that as a resource for you? I need you to go to my therapist because I know they're going to give me a monthly report that I can put in my 6-month report. That makes it easy for you, which is wonderful, right? But it's not collaborative. That means that if my resource does not look like your resource, how do we engage and partner with that? And how do we create repair and accountability? I think oftentimes confidentiality is one of the things that we talk about and we do horribly as social workers. We don't hold people's stories in the way in which we intend or in the way in which it's being shared with us. And so as we share people's life stories, do we think about the repair that has to happen from our own presence and our own actions in that process? For my ER folks going into the front end, that worker hated me. They took my kid. They didn't like me. They didn't listen to me. And then that's going to go to the next worker and the next worker and the next worker. Where does the repair happen? When we're passing people through a system and nobody is saying, I'm sorry. I know that that must be painful. I can only imagine what this might be like for you. Can you tell me about it? And actually hold space for that story, that level of being pissed off, that level of agitation and irritation, the level of confusion. Can you hold space and just sit in space with folks? So we're thinking about how we think about how we think about power sharing as a trauma-informed practice. Trauma is oftentimes a loss of control. And I saw a whole bunch of hands went up as soon as we said we like control, right? Our families have little control over what's happening in their lives. And so when we're thinking about that, we're thinking about moving away from just considering being trauma-informed. It's not enough to say, I'm aware that you've had trauma in your life. Cultural and community healing means that we are going to partner in moving beyond not just the trauma, but holding space and restoration to the individual. And so when we think about those pieces, we're thinking about how we reduce the threat responses that occur for individuals. Our shared presence is a threat. I once had a youth that was about a 10-year-old. He was about 10 years old. He had a younger brother and a younger sister. And this young man had been removed from school. I had no awareness that his removal occurred at school. I was the court intervention social worker. And I went out to go meet this young man. Where did I go meet him at? School. Why? Because it was easy for me. It was within my work hours. Let me go see this kid get it knocked off of my to-do list. Cerebral palsy, 10 years old, had an aide in class, and my immediate presence brought tears, stress, and frustration to this child. And I had to sit there in the discomfort that I caused this child, right? My awareness isn't it, my lack of awareness isn't enough to just say, oh, I didn't know that that happened to you. I'll leave you alone now. Well, I'm still leaving him with his feelings. I had to sit in the discomfort of the pain that I've caused this child. We have to think about that. When we're thinking about that restoration piece, that our agency sheer presence, and we might not always be aware or informed, but we have to be able to consider those impacts that we have and do something different, and we have to do better. And so we want to reduce that threat response, even if the threat is us. We want to build safety, trust, and engagement, but that means that we have to be willing to listen. That means that we have to be honest, that even if we don't like the information that's being shared with us, and we have our own opinions and our own biases of that information, that we're considering what that means for this individual. And that we're not holding standards for folks that are unrealistic. And so we're building that safety. How do you build safety? What do? How do you build it? Ask questions. Yeah, what does safety mean? Be consistent. Somebody else said it in the back somewhere. Empower them. Yeah. Listen to them. Validate. Follow the house. Whose house? Yeah. 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 Be a guest, right? Yeah. Yeah. We would expect the same on the reverse if someone were to enter our home, right? And so when we're thinking about this, thank you guys, when we're thinking about these elements of safety and how we build it as social workers, we have already presented as unsafe. Our sheer questions have resulted in an impact or an action that wasn't invited. I didn't invite you to take my children. And yet I shared information with you, and now my children have been removed. And so as we're continuously thinking about how to build safety, we have to consider our actions in the process, not just the actions of the parents that we're engaging with. And true engagement is everything that you guys just said. It's listening, it's being consistent, it's being present. True engagement is wanting to hear my story. True engagement is being willing to hear the things that are so unsavory about my life and the realities of what I've experienced. And what do you do with that? Because if you just store it in your brain and say, oh, I don't have time for a chronos today. Oh, I'll go do it in a week. I'll put some of it in, leaving out the other half. It's not engagement. You're leaving out parts of my story. You're holding on to what? The bias of the parts that were most important and relevant to you, which does what? It serves your role as a social worker to tell the narrative that you want to be told in a courtroom. And so when we're considering those pieces, we're thinking true engagement really means, can I tell the pieces of the story that might not make a difference, but is important to this individual? And that's why they shared it with us. And so we're also considering how we should support long-term well-being, not just today, but tomorrow, that our families are able to be whole and healthy in community and in spaces that they occupy, whatever that looks like for them and what that means for us. And so what are those long-term supports and who's involved? And it shouldn't be us forever, in case you didn't know. It should be their network. It should be their community. It should be their family. It should be their friends. It should be community service providers that have the capacity to be there long-term. It is not us. We are not there forever, and we have to remember that in that process. And so when we're thinking about those engagement pieces, some of our work is going to require that we help repair relationships within family systems. You've burned bridges with your family members. We got to help repair them because that's who's still going to be there so that I can leave. Our goal is always to leave, right? And so thinking about that, we're thinking about how we as practitioners move into a space of well-being. What does that look like? The emotional labor of equity work is heavy. It's a lot. If you're a person of color in this room, it might have been your whole entire life experience. If you're a Black person in this room, it probably has more likely than not been your entire life experience if you don't have options or availability to pass as anything other than. And that's the reality. And so when you think about that emotional labor of equity work, are you willing to continue to carry that charge forward? Are you willing to carry that weight for families, in partnership with families, and hold their stories and hold the realities that the world is not equitable? Even if we take words out of our dictionaries and take them off of laws, that doesn't mean that ignoring them makes this an equitable space. We can say no DEI. What does that really mean? The reality is that equity still has to be talked about, and it has to be front and center in our work. Because if it is not, you can pretend that those things are not influencing the way in which folks show up in the world, and it is every single day. There are folks who are having to hide parts of their identity. There are folks that are having to navigate challenges related to identity. And so we are thinking about that emotional labor, not only that we carry as social workers, but also that our families are going to carry as well. So what are those boundaries? Where do we hold boundaries for our families to preserve our own well-being? Where do we say, I'm going to have to call you back, or can you call me back? And where do we say, I have to do a little bit more? The work is never going to be equal. The work is never going to be evenly distributed. So we have to think about, what are our boundaries? What's your hard no? Do you know? You answering your phone call at 8 o'clock? Are you doing court reports at midnight? You'll get there if you haven't already. At many a 3 a.m. mornings, let me bust out this court report real quick. What are your boundaries? How do you preserve and sustain yourself? Are you taking care of yourself in this process? Because if you can't take care of yourself, it's the airplane, right? You can't put the mask on the child before you put it on yourself. Because if you're passing out, the child can't help you. So put the mask on yourself. What are your boundaries? What does reflective supervision look like? And I love to hear folks who are saying, I got to talk to my supervisor about the bias that I'm carrying into the work about the families I work with. Do you have that supervisor or that relationship that you can explore those pieces with? Because that is what is going to help sustain you in this work. You have to be able to say the uncomfortable thing out loud and sit in the discomfort and then grapple with it and wrestle with it and figure out, how do I do this again and do it differently tomorrow? But if you pretend that it's not happening, for you it might not be, but for the families it is. And so again, that reflective supervision, that partnership with your supervisor is really going to be where you lean into being able to explore and understand the way in which you are showing up with the power that you carry. And some of your supervisors might not be there as reflective with you. So find someone, find a partner, a colleague, a coworker in the work. Moving into collective care, what does that look like? How do you care for others? How do people know how to care for you? Do you know how to care for you? When you think about self-care, what's the thing that you do for yourself? And I don't want to hear pedicures every 2 weeks. So that's not going to help you when you're getting cussed out. What do you do? What does self-care look like in this room? Say it again. Sleep. You take a nap when people are yelling at you? If you can, I'll go sit in my car, right? What does it look like? Say it again. Yeah, go for it. Friday nights. Whole week of work. It's a long day until Friday comes. Yeah, we're almost there though. Be some friends in a couple hours. What else? Give yourself grace. What does that mean? Yeah. 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 And not beat yourself up in that 5 minutes, right? Yeah. Yeah. Go for it. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. You're really leaning into the multicultural guideline of communicating across difference of try on. What might this person be experiencing? Why might they be reacting or responding in the way in which they are? Because it's about them and it's not about us. We're just the sounding board that's receiving it, right? And so if I can slow down, like Avni says, if I can pause, and if I can make some sense of or hold space and allow this person to think on behalf of what might be happening for them. What if I were in that position? What might be happening for me? Go for it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you lift that up because I think one of the things that we oftentimes don't do when we're thinking about this notion of self-care is when we're creating this space to advocate for ourselves, are we also asking what culture am I responding to that has me working this hard, right? Hustle culture is so big, right? You got to hustle. You got to have 13 streams of income. You got to be a millionaire by 72. Like, what? No, I'm not. I'm just going to be a regular person with a little house. And, hopefully my kids, get out of my house at some point and come back to visit.
So I've been a mom 8 years.
Yeah.
I've been a juvenile correctional officer for 7.5, and I've been a social worker for 6.5 now. And I think part of this could be self-care, part of this can be for being there for my clients. But when my kids, not all of my kids as teachers, I felt liked them. But if you ask a teacher, do you like my child? They're going to say, oh, yes, we love your child or whatever. But when I worked at juvenile hall, there were some kids that I knew I wasn't going to make a difference for because they didn't like me or I reminded them of somebody or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to have the grace and I don't know, whatever, to be able to say to a coworker, I'm not reaching this person. For whatever reason, if it's my bias or not, but being able to go to my supervisor or even tell my client, if I'm not working for you, let's figure out what will work for you. Because we do want what's best for the child, and that means for the client too. but we can't all like each other just because we're getting paid to, whatever.
To show up.
That's that whole, what do they call those resting bitch face or whatever?
Yeah.
We have people, we will present
Yeah.
how we're feeling and being able to say, I can't do this.
Yeah, yeah. Which makes me think about what you ultimately start responding to when you show up to that client who you already have in your mind that I'm not going to make a breakthrough with them. You're already starting with a defeated attitude, right? And so then how does that show up in that engagement as opposed to taking that step back like you're recommending and saying, supervisor, I'm not going to make a dent with this client. We might need to get somebody else into this, right? Yes. And community healing. I can't be what everybody needs all of the time, right? I won't be.
I answer the phone on a Saturday or at 2:00 in the morning.
That must have been the probation world, huh? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so when we're thinking about these notions of self-care, we're thinking about collective care. It's not just about the way that we care about ourselves, but the way that we care about ourselves allows us the opportunity to care for others. And that community collective care means that people can also care about us. Because oftentimes we go into the work and we think, I have to be the only one to fix this family. First of all, we're not fixing anybody, right? We're not fixing folks. We don't have a show on the Oprah Winfrey Network, right? We're not fixing lives out here. That's not our job, right? But if we can hold space and allow folks to come in and say, hey, you're not making the impact that you think you are. Can I come out with you? Can I engage with you? I don't want to take over your case, but I will, if that means a better opportunity for this family in navigating this system, right? And so when we're thinking about that, do your coworkers know what you would need? Do they know when you're stressed out? Do they know when you need help? Do they have the capacity to help? How many folks in this room have ever needed help in their life? What are some of the things you needed help with? Shout it out. Contacts, who? Caseload. Caseload, yeah. The lit review, somebody want to read? She needs a lit review. Yeah. Say it again. Rent? Yes. Yes. I've been in that seat. Listen. And what is it like when you say, I need help with rent and somebody says, oh, but I could take you to eat. Well, I don't need to eat because that's not going to pay my landlord. Right? And oftentimes we have a need and someone shows up with a resource different than what we are asking for. That doesn't help solve my problem. And it is the same thing with our families. Sometimes we are showing up with resources that they are not asking for. I'm a great parent when I'm sober. My issue is sobriety. And it's not just sobriety, it's the trauma that I experienced prior to the substance use. But you want me to go sit in parenting for 6 weeks, right? Are we giving folks the thing that they need to repair the problem or the challenge that they're having in the moment? And so when we're thinking about that collective care, are we recognizing for them and are we allowing folks to recognize for us what that care looks like? And are we allowing ourselves to be vulnerable to that care? I got it. I could do it. I'll just do it at midnight. I'll do it at 2 a.m. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it on Saturday when I answer that phone call at 2 in the afternoon, even though I'm supposed to be at my kid's baseball game, right? No. Collective care means that we allow ourselves to relinquish some of the responsibilities and that we value our alignment. And so when we're thinking about that power sharing for action and not a theory, it's action. Somebody said it over here, right? Yeah, there you go. It's action. It is doing. It is an activity. It is not just a theory. It's not just a thought. It centers our dignity, our partnership, and our humanity. Every individual that we engage with is a human being who has navigated life in the way in which they have navigated it. And we have to be able to see the humanity in one another. We have to transform systems from being punitive to really thinking about being supportive. You are going to walk into a culture that has been established. And it was established through punishment. And some of that still lives in the way in which child welfare agencies operate. And so when I talk about building that frontage road, that getting off the highway, we got to get off the highway of punishment. We have to get into the space of where we are supporting families and community. And when we're sharing that power, we create conditions for well-being, because it's not just about us. It is about the families. It is about the children. It is about the community that we are going to continue to be a part of. And equity lives in everyday choices that we make. And we need to remember that. Oh, did I make it to my 5? Yay. All right. I just want to say this before we get to Q&A, that power shared is not power lost. My folks who love control in this room, sharing that power is not losing control. It is power returned to its rightful place and its rightful purpose. It's strengthening our collective capacity to heal, protect, and to thrive. And I think that most of us in this room, if not all of us, want healthy, thriving communities. And so how do we consider sharing our power to ensure that that's happening? We'll pause for Q&A.
We're going to open it up for some questions. If you have any questions for our presenter, please raise your hand.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm wondering, I know a lot of this is super beneficial for us, like going into our career. There's a lot of like be mindful, preventive kind of work. I feel like in my classes, I'm kind of well known for being super hard on like my fellow social workers, in that like I feel like I don't have the patience for those who are burnt out or tired or biased or whatever it is. So how do you think we can engage, not just like, okay, now I know what I need to be mindful of, but those who are coworkers who are like 20 years into the field now and are not doing their best anymore? How do you approach that with like patience and kindness instead of like, girl, get out, you know? Because sometimes that's how I feel. I'm just like, okay, you did it, then let's make some room, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like that's not helpful. Anyways, but yeah.
I think you're spot on. And I think, you know, the thing that I loved about social work as a learner and as a practitioner is that those skills are transferable. And so those skills of engagement that you're going out to utilize with community, can you utilize those same engagement skills with your colleagues? What's happening for you? And doing it in a way that is not blaming or shaming the practice that they have fallen into, but what's happening for you? What does this look like? And I love, this is one of my favorite questions. I do coaching now with a lot of folks in counties, and one of my favorite questions is, are you showing up to work today the way in which you intended? When you think about the day that you filled out that application and you said, I can't wait to be a social worker, right? For some of those folks, that's 20 years later. Are you still showing up with that same level of excitement and enthusiasm and desire to help families and community? And is that what people are experiencing of you? And so I think it's engagement. How do we engage, and how do we be able to engage people with feedback that allows them to see themselves when they've lost sight? Thank you.
I didn't have a question, sorry, but I just wanted to have a comment. I just wanted to say thank you. I think as a newer social worker, I just went into the field and I'm obviously getting my master's in social work. But I have a problem with case plans. I hate, you know, giving people those timelines like you need to fix it or you're not reunifying anytime soon.
What county are you with?
County of Sonoma.
Okay.
So one of the biggest things for me, like listening to you today, was really like those things sometimes are set to be really unrealistic, and really meeting them halfway is really important. So I just wanted to say thank you. Even in the bias, like in having biases, like I carry, like I see everything. Like I don't carry caseloads, but I work with AB 12 youth, and sometimes my thing is like, you have nobody left and you still are ignoring us and you don't want to work with us. But then it's also like, how are we not meeting them halfway and seeing what they actually need? rather than creating a TILP for them
Yeah.
and telling them what they want to achieve by the time that they age out completely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I love that point. And I just want to say in regards to case plans are a roadmap. If we are not seeing eye to eye on what the goal is, what is it that we're doing together? If you're writing my TILP for me, if you're writing my case plan for me, and I have had no say in that, we're not getting to the same endpoint. I can guarantee you that. And I'll share this one little story I saw on social media. There was a father who didn't have a strong relationship with his daughter through life, and this daughter had become an adult and owned her own home, but that father still went by every Saturday and mowed the lawn of that girl without knocking on the door, without disrupting her family life, without making mention, but he went over and mowed her lawn every single Saturday. And sometimes we have to get into the position of saying, I don't have to do this for the recognition. I need to do it because I know that this is something that this individual is going to need. And so for those AB 12 youth, what can you put on their doorstep and walk away? Or do you need to be appreciated for it? Because that's when it centers you and not them. And sometimes we have to shift our lens. Great question, or great comment. It's not a question over here. Oh, she's coming.
Thank you. So I feel like part of collective healing is also us as the people with more power is being able to take accountability and recognize when we have messed up and when we have hurt the client intentionally or unintentionally. How do you navigate that without also then making the client bear the burden of your accountability?
She's in my class, y'all. You're spot on. And it is not their responsibility to hold our mistake, right? And it's one of the things that we think about, again, intent and impact. It's one thing to know that you've left an impact on someone. You don't have to clean it up with your intentions once they've told you about it. Oh, you had an impact on me. Oh, let me tell you what I meant to say. No, they don't care. They already know what you said. They heard you the first time and it had an impact. And so we have to learn to sit in the discomfort that we harm people. And when we harm people, we have to hold space for that, and we have to figure out how to approach it differently the next time. But we can't keep going back into making ourselves feel better and expecting the harmed individual to be the holder of our feelings. It's not fair. And so if you get into disagreements, which you will in life, client or partner or friends or whatever, right? Think about how you ask people to hold space for your feelings versus you holding the discomfort of the actions that you've had. Great question.
Hello, my name is Roberto. Thanks again for the presentation. Just to kind of share the context to my question, I work at Santa Clara County in the Public Guardian's office, and so I really like what you said about transparency. I feel like transparency in government is huge. It should be. It's not, but I think it should be. And I really appreciated how you mentioned us being transparent with our supervisors and management about what we see is not working. But I'm curious your thoughts and maybe your mindset on how to cope with or respond to when you are being transparent, but there's no response or it falls flat or you're ignored.
Yeah. I think one of the great abilities that we have as social workers is to build partnership. And so when I'm mentioning the thing that's not going right, who do I have to be in partnership with that might carry a different level of power than I do? And can they use their voice? And can I get them on board with my cause or what my vision or where I see this deficit or this gap is? When I was with San Diego County, one of the things that I did, and it was mentioned earlier, one of the things that I did was I created a hair and skincare curriculum for African-American children for resource parents specifically. And my program manager at the time, she says, well, why? I know this is a big deal in the community, but why? Why is this a big deal, right? So we had to talk about it over and over and over again until I got my ability to get into a classroom and start training, right? And building that curriculum and doing the thing. And so where does your power lie? And if you don't carry the power, who can you partner with that does?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We have so many great questions. We have time for one more.
Hello.
Hello.
So I have a question for those of us who are entering into the county as employees in this upcoming cycle. So for those of us who really identify as people of color, what advice would you give us regarding like maintaining our psychological agency as we're entering into such a large institutional system? And I kind of would prefer to hear something other than self-care, because I think that is very important and we are learning how to manage that. But I think that as people of color, we are impacted by these systems prior to our experience coming into working for them.
Yeah.
So what would you say is a good way to maintain ourselves as we navigate our coworkers, our coworkers, our clients, and just ourselves?
Yeah. One of the things, I love this question. One of the things that I am a firm believer of is you have to build your village. Who is your community? Who is your tribe? And every single person needs a tribe within the work, but who can you trust? Who can you lean on? Who can you go to? Who will have your back? And your tribe is not always going to look like you. Your tribe needs to be diverse. Who has power? I have a colleague who is a white individual who says to me, I am willing to swipe my reloadable debit card on your behalf and get you access into spaces that doors don't automatically open for you. Right? That's one of my people, right? And then I have people who say, I know exactly what you're going through and I want to be able to talk about it or hear about your day in this process, right? And so I think it is who is in your village, who is in your tribe, who is going to help you sustain you. And you know better than anybody else what those people need to bring to the table. So you might have your shopping friend, you might have your clubbing friend, right? We're going to have a rent party at the end of the night, right? Like, whatever it is, you might have your, okay, let's go find some new people to date friend. You have your folks. Don't act, okay, who'd you see on Tinder? Okay, do they still use that? I don't know. No, I don't know what the sites are anymore. But nonetheless, you have your folks in your personal life. How do you build that in your professional life? What is that going to look like? Because it's hard work. And I think the other thing that I would add to that is knowing yourself. What are your rooted values? What are you not willing to give up on? What are you wanting to make sure that you hold dear to yourself and you're not going to compromise? Because it is easy to lose yourself and sight of yourself in a community that does not look like you, that is rooted in laws and values that were never built for you. And so I think self-identity, self-preservation, community. Great
Thank you.
question. Thank you. All right. Thank you, guys. Happy Friday.